Hello, hello.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm doing well. Can you hear me well?
Yes, I can hear you well. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. All right.
Perfect.
Awesome. So, I think we can wait a few seconds while we get more people here. But I will start just talking about the event that we have today, and then we can start maybe in a minute or so. Okay. So today we're going to be talking about IELTS and CELPIP. I have Autumn here. She is an ESL instructor. So she's specialized in teaching people how to take these exams and excel in the exams. And we're going to be talking about the differences between these two tests. She's going to give some pro tips on how to do well and get the score you need. And we're gonna talk about time management because I also took this test quite a few times, and one of the biggest challenges, in my opinion, is time management, right? And she's gonna also give some general tips about the exams and how you can do well and how you can prepare for the test. And I'm also gonna give a promotion at the end of this live event. So I'm gonna give discount on my initial consultation. So it's a 10% discount, and I'll give you the code at the end of this live. So you have to watch until the end. So I guess we can start. So if you want to introduce yourself, Autumn, and then we can see if anyone has any questions, feel free to type here in the box, and we're going to get back to you as soon as possible.
Okay, sure. Well, thank you so much for co-hosting with me today. I'm happy to be here and sharing my knowledge about these two exams.
Mhm.
So my name is Autumn. I am from Nova Scotia, born and raised, but I started my journey with teaching English a few years ago when I was living in Spain. The intention was not to be an English teacher. I didn't
Mhm.
have a lot of money when I was in Spain, so I started teaching English as a source of income. And then I realized how much I loved it. And then when I moved back to Canada, I got certified and I realized that there was a huge demand for exam preparation for IELTS for individuals that are looking to come to Canada and perhaps study and work in an English speaking country where the language is the first language. And then as well, specifically those that wish to immigrate to Canada. About 3 years ago, I started working with clients on CELPIP preparations. So on a weekly basis, I would say I work with about 10 to 12 students, and at least half of them or over half of them are IELTS and CELPIP candidates.
Oh, that's great. And I believe you have a lot of students from Latin America, right? From
A
what I thought.
lot, a lot. But there's some that I have students that come from the Middle East, from Asia,
Hmm.
South America, all over the world, and also some that are based in Canada as well,
Hmm.
all over the country, BC, Ontario, Winnipeg,
Hmm.
Manitoba, everywhere.
That's great. And so people can just book a time with you, like an hour or two, or how does it work?
Exactly. So I offer mainly 1 hour sessions for either IELTS or CELPIP preparation online. I could do 30 to 45 minutes. However, most candidates find that an hour is most sufficient because I work with candidates directly on their speaking and their writing practice. We usually need about an hour to cover
Hmm.
those two topics within that time frame.
Hmm. And I believe this is perfect now because of COVID, right? People can just study online. And
Exactly, right from your home. It's very convenient. And my cat
yeah.
joins our lessons, which actually he's sitting on the table right now. I can show you guys.
Oh, yeah.
You can see him right
Oh,
here.
Barry.
Yeah, there's Barry.
He
So
wants to
he likes
join
to come
the.
in front of the camera.
That's awesome. And so, what would you say is the basic difference between IELTS and CELPIP? For those who don't know, CELPIP is also accepted by IRCC, but you can only take CELPIP if you live in Canada. So if you live outside Canada, you have to take IELTS. But if you're in Canada and you wanna immigrate, you can either take IELTS or CELPIP. So what is the basic difference between these two exams?
Okay, so that's a very good question because A lot of candidates can get confused by these two exams. There are some differences and similarities. They are the same in time duration, so they are both 3 hours. The CELPIP is done in one sitting, and it is 100% computer based. However, the IELTS is a 2 hour and 45-minute exam where you do your reading, your writing, and your listening in one slot, and then your interview for your speaking is about 10 to 15 minutes, and that would be in another slot. So they're both 3 hours, but the IELTS is not 100% computerized. Your speaking test is face-to-face with a person. But you do have two choices with IELTS. There is a handwritten exam and there is a computer-based exam. And it really depends which one you want to do for computer-based or handwritten. Some individuals like to handwrite, some individuals say their handwriting is awful. And also, not every place will offer both the computer and the handwritten, so you need to check with the closest location to take your test if they offer both or one or the other. IELTS has many different accents from all over the world from native English speakers, whereas CELPIP is Canadian accents, idiomatic expressions, and cultural content specifically in Canada. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be familiar with Canadian accents to do well on the test. But you will not find other accents apart from Canadian ones.
Yeah, actually, I took CELPIP 3 times. I took IELTS 1 time, and one of the biggest challenges for me when I took IELTS was that the accent is completely different from what I'm used to. So the Canadian accent is really clean, right? Like your accent is clean, it's easy to understand.
Thank you.
Yeah, but when you're taking IELTS, you have that like I don't know, maybe you're here in Canada or somewhere else, you're studying like the American accent, and then you have someone speaking with a thick British or Australian accent, and you're kind of like, what?
Yes,
Yeah.
I mean, even for myself, if I speak with a person that is from Scottish descent and they have a Scottish accent or an Australian accent, I myself have to understand their accent because it's quite different from my own. So adding on to what you mentioned about IELTS being international, CELPIP is also international. They're opening up more places to take tests, such as the Philippines. I believe on the list you can also take it in the States. I have a client from the Dominican Republic who said they could do it in the States, but I didn't see it on the list. But the idea is that CELPIP is now opening up centers to take the test, not just in Canada, but outside. But in Canada, in a lot of major cities in the country, such as in Toronto and Vancouver, here in Halifax, where you and I are based, you can take the CELPIP test.
Yeah, and we have a few people here watching our live. So if you have any questions, feel free to write in English, or if you want to write in Portuguese or Spanish, Otto can talk to you in Spanish. So we're good. So if you have any questions, just feel free to write to us. So another thing that I found really hard when I was taking CELPIP is that you have to, like, you're not talking to a person, right? So it was really hard for me to maybe describe a picture or, find the words or find what to say for 2 minutes. While when I was taking IELTS, it's easy to talk to someone. So it's funny that there are some sections of the test that I find it easier, when I took CELPIP rather than when I took IELTS. But I think it's kind of like 50-50. I found like the listening, it's easier when you take CELPIP, and the speaking is so hard for CELPIP. So I think it's kind of like 50-50 right in the end.
Yes, a lot of my clients that come to me, they say that their friend took the CELPIP or took the IELTS, and they say, well, the CELPIP is easier in speaking. But individuals have to remember that not everybody is the same. Not everybody will have the same strengths. I know for me personally, I prefer to have a speaking test where I speak with a person. However, the subjects in CELPIP, I know the first one will always be, for example, like giving advice.
Mm.
So there's pros and cons to both of them, but the thing about CELPIP is that there are 8 different speaking sections, whereas the IELTS are only 3.
Mm.
So you kind of have to compare, well, would I rather do one where I'm talking to a person? Would I rather do one where I'm talking into the computer? But there are a couple of different things that you can do to work on the CELPIP speaking. One thing that I recommend to my clients is in your own time, take a practice test. Find a recorder, like most modern cell phones have a record button.
Mm.
Record yourself speaking when you do the task, listen back to it, and ask yourself, how is your fluency? Are you using vocabulary that you would use in everyday language if you were talking to your mother, brother, boss,
Mhm.
whoever? The thing about CELPIP is if the instructions say to talk to a person, you actually have to make it seem like you're talking to a person. Like, you imagine you're on the phone, like, hi mom, I heard that you're having some issues with this. So you actually make it seem like you're face to face. The more you sound like it's reality in your CELPIP speaking,
Mhm.
especially when you're talking to a person, the easier it's going to be. If you don't try to use some emotion into your speaking, if you have to talk to a person with some of the speaking, you can sound very flat. It's the
Yeah.
same with IELTS speaking. So
Yeah.
if you don't put any emotion into your questions that are asked of you, it's going to be a little bit challenging.
It is. It is. So we have a couple of questions here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so Lorena, she mentioned that I didn't include the topic of the live. Sorry, I forgot to do that. But we're talking about IELTS and CELPIP. But I'll save the live on the Instagram TV. So I'll make sure that I specify what it is this about. Um, so we have another question here. Does CELPIP accept, so universities accept CELPIP? I think they don't, right? Do they?
No, it's kale. So CELPIP is owned by Paragon.
Yeah.
And Paragon has, as far as I know, a couple of different tests. They have CELPIP, which is for immigration, and they have the test CAEL, CAEL,
Hmm.
that particular universities will accept this exam. But in a lot of cases, I know that individuals will take the academic IELTS because the CAEL is, I think it's only based here in Canada, and
Hmm.
most international students aren't in the country yet. They're abroad,
Hmm.
and they need their IELTS academic in order to apply for their programs. But CAEL would be the exam that some institutions accept. Not all universities will accept this program.
Hmm. So that kind of brings to the next topic that it's between IELTS general training and IELTS academic. Like I do know that the general training for immigration purposes is slightly easier than the IELTS academic. Is that right?
Well, thinking about it from working with many clients for general and academic, I would say that it's very different. I don't know if it's easier, uh, but with the general writing, for example, you would need to write a letter in part 1, and then in part 2, you would have an essay question. As the academic, though, for IELTS, it's usually a graph or some sort of pie chart, or you have to take some sort of information. Maybe it's measured in percentages, or it's measured in tons or kilograms or something. And you have to illustrate that in a few different paragraphs, in introduction and overview, and a couple of body paragraphs, the information that is given. But task 2 in the academic of the writing for IELTS is very similar to that of the general. So what's really different in the writing is task 1 for the general is a letter. Task 1 for the academic is, so we have task 1 letter for general, task 1
Mm-hmm.
academic is like a chart or some sort of
Mm-hmm.
information where you have to take data. Now, the reading is also a little bit different in the IELTS. Academic in general, the reading is not exactly the same. But for the listening and the speaking in IELTS, they're very similar in general and academic.
Mm-hmm. And we have another question here. Someone is asking which one is more complicated for foreign speakers. I mean, I have watched several IELTS tests on YouTube, and I got quite worried about it. A band 7 is such a high level in fluency. I mean, I think she meant between CELPIP and IELTS, right? Yeah.
Okay, well, they both have different ways that they score in the IELTS and the CELPIP. So it's a little bit difficult to say because like one individual, they could have really good pronunciation. However, their grammar can affect them if the rater, for example, in CELPIP can't quite understand what they are saying. But how you can improve, if we look in particular about you know, certain skills such as speaking, the first thing that I'm going to say is there are many free resources online. Both CELPIP and IELTS have a YouTube page where they have lots and lots of great videos. And it's a good idea to take a look at some of these videos. I wouldn't recommend to go on random websites and random YouTube pages without knowing who these individuals are and if they're in partnership with CELPIP or IELTS, if they're a certified CELPIP coach like myself, certified IELTS coach. So it's good to know where your sources are coming from. That's the first tip I always give clients when I work with them is don't go on random websites. Make sure you understand where your sources are coming from because there's a lot of false information. And a lot of times when I work with clients who have taken the test before, they're unfortunately given false information. Or they're given samples from writing, for example, where there's certain things that you're not necessarily allowed to do in these exams, or you'll score not as well if you're not aware of certain things. So look for reliable information on the internet. The other thing is, it is a good idea to work with an individual that is trained in the CELPIP or IELTS exam, because they can tell you things that maybe you're not realizing, especially for your speaking and writing. So work with someone who's certified versus not certified, because an individual that's not certified may not know certain things about the test. So that's the other thing that I would say.
Well, this is just the same situation when you're working with an immigration consultant, right? Make sure he's
Yes.
right? Because you're getting the best information possible, right? And
Yes,
we are
exactly.
liable for what we are saying, so we cannot just say anything. You know, we're liable, so we know what we're doing because we're responsible, right? We have the license.
Yes, they don't call us experts for nothing. There's
Yeah,
a reason why they call us experts.
yeah, for sure. And between, so IELTS, we mentioned that you have the paper-based and the computer-based IELTS, right? Is there any difference other than the speaking? No, I think even the speaking in the computer-based.
No, the speaking is the exact same. So the IELTS test is 2 hours and 45 minutes for the reading, listening, and writing, and then you have a separate interview for your speaking for IELTS for both the academic and the general.
And what would you say about time management? Like, I know that you have like 60 minutes to do the task 1, task 2. How can you improve your time management? Or is there a way that you can practice? Or what do you
Yes.
recommend people to do?
Yes. So I'm assuming you're still talking about the writing. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you need to make the situation very similar to that of the exam. So in both exams, in the IELTS and in the CELPIP, they give you 2 tasks and you have 1 hour to do them. Sometimes I have candidates when I ask them about their homework, because when my clients work with me, I tell them, make sure you do your writing for homework and you do it within the 1 hour given. Because in the test, you cannot separate them. You can't say, oh, well, I'm going to do 20 minutes for the writing in the morning for task 1 for IELTS and then do the 40 minutes later. You have to make sure you do them together because you need to make it very similar to that of the situation of the exam. Some candidates are ready for the exam because their level of English is approximately the test score that they need. However, they don't prepare mentally for the exam, such as approximately the 3-hour duration that they'll be actually taking it. So yes, the first thing I will tell you is dedicate 1 full hour where you don't have any distractions. And what else I will say is that you need to make sure that you're timing yourself, because a lot of times when I work with candidates for the first class or two, they tell me that they go overtime. So they need to learn how to practice in managing their time. I would say on average that you should be, practicing your IELTS or CELPIP writing at least 2 or 3 times a week. But it's not just the exam writing that you need to practice. You also need to be doing some free writing where you don't have any time limits, where you can work on random subjects, where you can work on your vocab, you can work on your grammar, you can work on your sentence structure, etc. As for samples, the IELTS website and the CELPIP website, they both have free samples. So if individuals are looking to get some reliable sources, they can find them from the websites.
And immigration, they have over 80 different programs, right? And each program, they have, different requirements. And I believe Express Entry is the most popular program. I believe you have many clients who talk about Express Entry, and they need a CLB 9. And if you get only a CLB 7, it's not enough to get an invitation to apply. So how hard it is to get a CLB 9 if you're living in Canada versus abroad in a non-native speaker country? I believe there are big differences, right?
Well, to be honest with you, whether someone lives in Canada or they live outside of Canada, I don't really see much of a difference. It's all about the lifestyle that they have with their English practice. So if I work with someone who integrates English into their life on a regular basis, it's going to be easier for them to improve their English quicker, which means that they'll prepare better for the exam. So I would say that if you are listening to podcasts in English, maybe 2 or 3 times a week, you're reading news articles, maybe 10 minutes a day, you're having conversations in English with native speakers on a regular basis, then it will help you to improve for your exam. It's not enough just to practice 1 or 2 hours a day only on exam material. It's like a lifestyle. I can speak to this because I've been learning Spanish for over 10 years. And the only way I will improve my Spanish is if I speak Spanish on a regular basis, if I read Spanish on a regular basis, which would contribute to improving grammar, pronunciation, vocab, for example.
Yeah, it's funny that you have to keep practicing, right? So for example, when I immigrated to Canada, I was able to get a CLB 9 back in 2016, I think. And to get my license as an immigration consultant, you also need a CLB 9. And then I haven't studied English for over 3 years. And then when I took the exam, I think it was last year, I failed, didn't get CLB 9. And I was cocky and I thought, you know what, I don't need to study or I don't need to practice because, I got CLB 9 back in 2016 and then I failed.
Even so native English speakers can do poorly on these exams because it's not just your ability to speak the language, to write in the language, it's also to understand the formatting, of your writing, for example, in CELPIP. You can't write a formal essay in task 2. And if you've taken IELTS, you tend to confuse that because in IELTS, it's more of a formal essay. So understanding what they're looking for in each exam is also going to help you to do well. Because if you don't know what they're looking for or what you need to do, then it's kind of like going in with blinders.
Yeah, it is. It is. And we have a few more minutes here. So guys, if you have any questions, feel free to write to us. And I believe we have one more topic that is just like general tips. How can someone prepare for the test, or what should they watch out, before the test? Get a good night's sleep, or what else can you tell
Yes.
students?
Okay. So I've got some really good tips. I've
Yeah.
been doing IELTS for about 5 or 6 years now, and I've been doing CELPIP for about 3. So I'm constantly learning as well. Like there's always something new that I can learn.
Mm-hmm.
So the general tip I will say is never stop learning.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I work with candidates that they do receive their band scores, and then they stop taking English classes altogether, or they don't continue to improve their language skills, and they start losing some of their skills. So I would say be consistent. Consistency is going to help you to maintain the skills you have and to help you go forward. So if you're only speaking English like once a week or just looking at it for an hour a week, it's not enough. So I would say consistency is your best friend. I have a saying that I always say to my students. I always say to them, a marathon, you don't run 40 kilometers within a week or two of preparation. It takes months and it takes a lot of time. It's the same with languages. You can't expect to learn a language or to go from a beginner to an advanced within a couple of weeks. It takes a lot of time. So with that being said, most candidates that work with me will work with me maybe about 2 to 3 months before the exam, if their English level is around the same as the score that they need. If it's not, I probably would recommend to them to make sure that we improve some English components of their reading, writing, speaking, listening before we dive in deep into exam preparation. So I would say do not book your test, 2 weeks in advance, and only give yourself 2 weeks to prepare, because it's not a lot of time. You have to make sure you plan very well, and you have to make sure that you have a consistent study plan. Sometimes I work with individuals and they say, Autumn, I just don't have time to study or to go over the notes that you've given me. And I understand, like right now individuals are going through hard times with the pandemic, and life in general can get very busy, but in order to do well on the exam and to make improvements in a timely manner, you have to make a true dedication to it. It's like a university course.
Yeah, for sure. And we have Erica ask which of the tests are easier. I mean, we already kind of went through that. It's just I don't think there's an easier test, right? I would say.
No, but I will say that if you do currently live in Canada and are comfortable with Canadian accents and Canadian idioms, I would say, on a personal note, I would take the CELPIP. However, it's a good idea to compare both tests to see which one you're more comfortable with, because they have different formats and different types of questions. They both test the same things: your reading, writing, speaking, listening. But yes, I know personally, as I'm Canadian and I'm in Canada, I would be more comfortable with that. But again, you do not have to be familiar with Canadian accents in order to do well on the CELPIP. But it may make a candidate more comfortable.
Yeah, I had better luck with CELPIP. That's the test that I got, the CLB 9. So IELTS not so much.
Yeah. And I know with CELPIP, you can do a reassessment. I don't know the exact process, but I do have candidates that maybe they got an 8 out of 12 and they needed like a 9. And they got a reassessment. But I would say reassessments are not always the solution to get the scores that you need. If you feel genuinely that you did well and you were ready for the test, then yes, you could probably go for a reassessment. But if you took it and you're like, no, I definitely was not close to what I needed, then I would not recommend a reassessment.
Yeah, so Name is saying CELPIP is more friendly. Yeah.
Yes, she's one of my students.
Oh yeah.
She's in BC.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
So I personally had a better experience with CELPIP. I don't know the thing about IELTS. I did the paper based, and I haven't write a single sentence in years, and then I had to write 2 long texts, and it wasn't easy. So my handwriting was terrible, and I got a pretty bad score. So my opinion was just the handwriting.
Yes, most candidates nowadays do not prefer to do the handwritten, but it is offered at most places to take it. So it's a personal choice. Like if you're going to do the handwritten, then you're going to practice on, paper. But if you're doing the computerized, you're going to practice by typing.
Yeah. And we're coming to the end. Wow, 30 minutes flew by so fast, huh?
Yeah, my cat's sleeping on the desk right now.
Oh, yeah. And so if someone wants to have classes with you, how should they book a time with you? There's a website, or how does it work?
Yeah, so I teach through a few different platforms. There's a platform called italki.com that a lot of clients in Canada and outside of Canada can find me on. But also they can contact me via email. Sometimes I get some references, and an individual will say, Autumn, I heard about you through a friend, and they can also just book with me privately, and then we will have classes usually on Skype. I can do other platforms, but I like Skype because I can record the sessions for my clients, and they can listen back to the recording, and they can hear my wonderful voice and all of the tips that I give them, and they can also hear themselves with our practice speaking test, for example, and they can review.
And yeah, if I will tag your Instagram profile, so if they want to add you or send you a note there, so you can book some time to have classes. I guess that's okay, right?
Yeah, and if anyone has any questions in particular about these tests, they can send me a DM on Instagram. So yes, that's not a problem. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone may have about these two exams.
Yeah, you see, Nova Scotians are so friendly.
Yeah, I've moved out of the country and to other provinces, but I always come back to Nova Scotia. I love it here.
It's
and
a
I'm always
beautiful
telling
province.
my students, what's that?
It's a beautiful province, huh?
Yes, it is. And I always tell students, come visit me, when you can, because I'd love to be your tour guide. So.
Yeah. And we have another question. So I heard that some colleges are taking Duolingo as a reference of your level. Do you recommend this app?
To be honest, I'm not certified in Duolingo as a trainer to help individuals prepare for this. So I can't really comment on this. I guess it depends on your options. If the educational institution offers you Duolingo or IELTS or CALE, compare the differences in the format of the exam, and then you can go from there, because if you have options, why not explore them?
Yeah. And I guess you have another student here. You're a great teacher. I appreciate the way you teach.
Oh, I'm very blessed to have great students. So
Nazir?
Yes.
All right, awesome. All right, guys. So thank you, everyone, for watching our Instagram live. I did mention that we're gonna have a promo. So I'm gonna give 10% off on my initial consultation until the end of October. So starting today until October 31st, if you book an initial consultation on my website and you use the promo code Halifax10, so it's Halifax 10 together and 10 the number 10, you will get 10% off on the initial consultation. You can book now in October and have the consultation in November, December, it's okay, but you have to book until by the end of the month. Okay, so thank you, Autumn. It's been a pleasure.
My pleasure. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, and I wish good luck to everyone who is planning to come to Canada, maybe attend university, college, or immigrate. Canada is a great place. Nova Scotia is even better.
Yes.
Right? And if you have any questions, if you want to get in touch with me, feel free to send me an Instagram message or send an email. I'm happy to help. All right. And one more. Oh yeah, one of the best English teachers you had.
Yes, this is Melody. Thank you, Melody. I appreciate that. You were a fantastic student.
Oh, that's great. Where is she from?
She's from Iran, but she lives in BC.
Oh, okay. So you have many clients in BC, huh?
Yes.
Wow, but they wake up early, or it's like 4 or 5 hours?
She has taken classes pretty early, so she's
Yeah,
very dedicated. So yes.
that's awesome. All right, thanks, guys. Thanks, Autumn.
Thank you, Lucas. I'll
See
see
ya.
you later.
Bye bye.
Bye.